Major Edward Hayden is 28 years old. He's from Oklahoma, where the sky is big and flat and you can see tomorrow coming from 100 miles away. But up here over the industrial heart of the Third Reich, tomorrow arrives without warning. He's leading 8 P-47 Thunderbolts home. The mission was simple: escort B, 17S to the target, keep the Luftwaffe off their backs, bring everyone home. They accomplished 2 out of 3, lost 1 bomber to flak over the target. The pilot, a kid from Wisconsin named Morrison, went down with his ship. Ed saw the parachutes, 6 of them. 4 men didn't make it out. That's war. You count the losses. You file the report. You try not to think about Morrison's wife back in Madison. Ed's hands are cold despite his leather gloves. The cockpit smells like oil and cordite, and the particular metallic scent of high altitude, where the air is so thin it tastes like pennies on your tongue. His wingman, Lieutenant James Crawford, is tucked in tight on his right. Good kid, 22 years old, wants to be a commercial pilot after the war. Talks about it all the time. Flying passengers to California, making enough money to marry his girl back in Pennsylvania. Ed's thinking about the debriefing, thinking about coffee, thinking about the letter he needs to write to Morrison's widow. He's not thinking about the future, but the future is about to call. That night, the report lands on General Henry Arnold's desk in Washington, D.C. at 3 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time. Arnold is 58 years old. He's had 2 heart attacks. He sleeps 4 hours a night when he sleeps at all. He reads the intelligence briefing about German jet development twice. Then he picks up the red phone. 3:30 in the morning Pacific Time. The phone rings in Burbank, California. A man named Clarence Leonard Johnson answers. Everyone calls him Kelly. He's 34 years old. He's been asleep for exactly 2 hours. Arnold's voice on the phone is tired but clear. Kelly, I need you to do something nobody's ever done. Design and build America's first jet fighter. From scratch. Can you do it in 180 days? Kelly Johnson looks at the clock on his nightstand. Looks at his wife Althea, who's awake now, watching him. Looks at the half-empty coffee cup on his desk, where he was working before he finally collapsed into bed. Kelly Johnson is from Michigan. His father was a Swedish immigrant who worked construction and never trusted anything he couldn't fix with his hands. Kelly inherited that practicality. Also inherited his father's belief that if you say you'll do something, you do it. No excuses, no extensions. You gave your word. He does the math in his head, saying, 180 days is impossible. But Kelly Johnson doesn't believe in impossible. He believes in hard, and hard is just a matter of hours and sweat. Make it 143 days, General, he says. I don't like to waste time. This is the story of what happened next. The story of brilliant machines that arrived when the war was already won. The story of American ingenuity racing against a clock that had already run out. The story of what it means to build tomorrow's weapon for yesterday's war. And if you served, or if your father served, or if you remember when America built things that made the world stand up and take notice, this story is for you. Because this isn't just about airplanes. It's about the men who built them, the men who flew them, and the men who died waiting for them to arrive. If you wore the uniform, any branch, any war drop, a comment below. Tell us where you served. This story is your story, the story of being ready when your country needed you. Even if your country didn't need you quite yet. Kelly Johnson doesn't look like a genius. He looks like a farmer who forgot to go home, which in a sense is exactly what he is. Born 1910 in Ishpeming, Michigan, small town, iron country. His father, Peter Johnson, came from Sweden with $5 and a willingness to work until his hands bled. Raised 9 children on a construction foreman's salary. Taught them all the same lesson. You want something, you build it yourself. Kelly built his first wind tunnel at age 13. Used scrap metal from his father's construction sites. Built it in the garage. His father came home, saw what Kelly had done, and said exactly 4 words. Does it work, son? It worked. By 34, Kelly had already designed the P-38 Lightning, twin boom fighter, distinctive, deadly, the plane that killed Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto over the Pacific in 1943. When you design the aircraft that kills the architect of Pearl Harbor, people remember your name. Now, General Arnold wants him to do something harder, something that might be impossible. Design and build America's first operational jet fighter. From nothing. in 143 days. For context, Germany spent 4 years developing the Messerschmitt Me-262. Britain spent 3 years on the Gloucester Meteor. The Russians are still trying to figure out how jet engines work. Kelly has 5 months. He assembles 23 men. Not 100, not 50, 23. He picks them personally. Best thermodynamicists in America, best propulsion engineers, best stress analysts. Men who understand that genius isn't about being smart, it's about being relentless. They work in a rented circus tent next to a plastics factory in Burbank. The factory makes airplane canopies. The chemical process smells like sulfur and rotting rubber. The smell is so bad, one of Kelly's engineers jokes that it's like working next to the skunk works from the Lil Abner comic strip. The name sticks. Kelly doesn't care about the smell, doesn't care about the tent, doesn't care that there's no heat in January and you can see your breath while you're drawing blueprints. He cares about 143 days. Day 1. Kelly draws the entire airplane by hand, every curve, every stress point, every rivet. He's not sleeping. Not really. His wife Althea brings him dinner. He eats while drawing. She finds the plate the next morning, food cold and half-touched. She asks him once, "Kelly, when's the last time you slept in our bed?" He has to think about it at 3 days. 4, I'll sleep when it flies, he says. Day 30, the basic design is complete. But Kelly's still refining, still chasing numbers. How much thrust? How much fuel? How do you balance speed against range, against armament, against the fact that jet engines in 1944 are about as reliable as a promise from a politician? Day 60, they're building it, actually building it, riveting the tail section before the nose is finalized, fabricating wing sections based on blueprints that Kelly's still revising. It's insane. It shouldn't work. It's working. Day 90, the engine arrives, a British Halford H-1B turbojet, the only jet engine available in America. The British shipped it over as part of the alliance. Kelly's team has never seen a jet engine before, or they study it like it's alien technology, which in a sense it is. They make it fit. Day 120, assembly. The airplane is taking shape. It looks fast sitting still. Clean lines, single engine, tricycle landing gear, no propeller. Kelly stands in the tent at 2 in the morning, looking at it and thinks this is what tomorrow looks like. But tomorrow needs to arrive in 23 days. Day 143, January 8th, 1944. Muroc, Dry Lake, California, the place that will later be called Edwards Air Force Base, the place where America tests the future. The XP-80 Shooting Star sits on the lake bed, silver, beautiful, waiting. Test pilot Milo Burcham is 37 years old. He used to race airplanes before the war. Flew the Bendix Trophy race in 1938. Finished third. He's got the kind of nerves that don't fray, the kind of hands that don't shake. He straps in. Kelly Johnson is standing on the lake bed with his team, 23 men who haven't slept properly in 5 months. They're trying not to show emotion, trying to look professional, trying to pretend this is just another test flight. Nobody's fooled. This is history. 9:47 in the morning. Milo advances the throttle. The Halford engine spools up. No propeller vibration, no reciprocating engine rumble, just a rising whine like a tea kettle reaching boil. The XP-80 rolls, accelerates, and at 90 knots Milo pulls back and America's first jet fighter lifts off. 45 minutes later, he lands, shuts down, climbs out. Kelly Johnson is standing there trying very hard not to cry in front of his men. Milo walks up to him, holds out his hand. "Kelly," he says, "she's faster than you promised." Kelly shakes his hand, nods, walks back to the tent that's been home for 143 days, and cries. His team pretends not to notice, but they all know they've just done the impossible. Built tomorrow in less time than it takes most people to plan a wedding. The XP-80 works. It's fast. It's as reliable. It's everything General Arnold wanted. It's March 1944. The war in Europe has 14 more months to run. 14 months, more than enough time to make a difference. So why didn't it? For 18 months, the answer was Arnold wasn't ready to risk it. The P-80 worked, but jet engines were experimental. Unreliable. Better to wait. Better to be cautious. Then in October 1944, everything changed. Major Edward Hayden, leading 8 P-47 Thunderbolts over Germany, encountered something that made Arnold's caution feel like a fatal mistake. A German fighter, no propeller, twice as fast as anything American. The Me-262 had arrived. The silver shape screamed through his formation. Ed saw the flash of cannons, saw Crawford's P-47 come apart like someone tore the wings off a model airplane. No fire, no explosion, just sudden catastrophic disintegration. 1 second Crawford was there talking about California. The next second he was in pieces falling toward Germany. 3 more P-47s went down in the next 8 minutes. The silver thing made passes so fast Ed couldn't track it with his gun sight. It was like trying to shoot a lightning bolt. By the time you see it, it's already somewhere else. Ed got his remaining 4 birds into a defensive circle. The German made 2 more passes, then disappeared into the clouds. Just vanished. Like a ghost. Ed landed at base 40 minutes later. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely sign the after-action report. The intelligence officer asked him what he saw. Ed looked at him, thought about Crawford, about the 4 other boys who weren't coming home. "Sir," he said, "we just got outrun by the future, and we're still flying in 1943. That report landed on Arnold's desk at 3 o'clock in the morning. Arnold read it twice and thought about the P-80S sitting in hangars, waiting for permission. Now finally the ME-262 made the decision for him, and it was time to deploy. But here's where the story gets hard, where triumph turns into something that tastes like ash. General Henry Arnold has the P-80. It works. Test pilots love it. It's faster than anything Germany has. On paper, this is the weapon that wins air superiority over Europe. The thing that stops the Me-262, the thing that saves bomber crews. But Arnold is 58 years old. He's had 2 heart attacks. His doctors told him to retire. He told them to go to hell. He's running the entire Army Air Forces while his body is actively trying to kill him. And he's terrified of making the wrong decision. Because here's the problem with jet engines in 1944, they're unreliable. The British Halford engine in the P-80 has a 25-hour service life. Then it needs a complete rebuild. 25 hours. That's maybe 15 combat missions if you're lucky. And here's the question that keeps Arnold awake at 3 in the morning. Do you send young American pilots into combat in a machine that might flame out over enemy territory? Do you trade one risk for another? Do you bet American lives on British engine technology that's barely out of the experimental phase? Arnold makes his decision. The P-80 will continue testing, continue development, but no combat deployment, not yet. Not until the engines are more reliable, not until they're sure. It's the careful decision, the safe decision, the decision that probably saves some American pilots from dying in engine failures over Germany. It's also the decision that keeps the P-80 out of the war. And somewhere in Italy, a 26-year-old lieutenant named William Leverett is about to learn what that decision means. Bill Leverett is from Alabama, small town called Bessemer, just outside Birmingham. His father worked in the steel mills. Bill grew up watching P-38 Lightnings being built at the local plant. Knew from age 12 he was going to be a pilot. He's good at it, really good. 11 confirmed kills flying P-38s over Europe. He's survived 2 years of combat, seen friends die, seen good pilots make one mistake and not come home. He's developed the kind of calm that comes from accepting that tomorrow might not come. January 1945. Bill volunteers for the P-80 program. They send him and one other pilot, Lieutenant Robert Reeves, to Italy. Give them 2 YP-80 shooting stars. Brand new, faster than anything in the sky. Their orders are clear, reconnaissance only. No combat. Bill reads the orders 3 times, asks his commanding officer if there's been a mistake. No mistake, Lieutenant. You fly reconnaissance. You gather intelligence. You do not engage. Bill wants to ask why. Wants to ask what the point is of having the fastest fighter in the theater if you can't actually fight with it. But he's a lieutenant, and the colonel is a colonel, and in the Army Air Forces, you don't question orders. You just follow them. February 1945. Bill flies his first mission in the YP-80, reconnaissance over German positions in northern Italy. He's at 500 miles per hour at 400 feet. He can see the Germans looking up, See them tracking him with their eyes because their anti-aircraft guns can't traverse fast enough. He flies over a German airfield, counts aircraft, notes positions, does exactly what his orders say. A Me-262 takes off, tries to intercept him. Bill accelerates. The YP-80 pulls away like the Me-262 is standing still. It's not even close. Bill could loop around, get on the German's 6 o'clock him before the German pilot even knew Bill was there. But his orders say reconnaissance only. So Bill flies home, files his report, tries not to think about it. March 15th, 1945. Bill's flying reconnaissance again. Northern Italy, clear sky. He's thinking about home, about his mother's cooking, about whether he'll make it back to Alabama in time for his sister's wedding in June. His radio crackles. It's Reeves, his wingman. "Bill, you seen this?" Bill looks down. There's a dogfight happening. 3 P-51 Mustangs tangling with 2 Me-262s. The Mustangs are good pilots, experienced, but they're in Mustangs and the Germans are in jets, and it's not a fair fight. Bill watches one of the P-51s get hit, watches it start smoking. The pilot bails out, parachute opens. The pilot will probably be okay if he lands in Allied territory. The other 2 Mustangs are still fighting, still trying. One of them is flown by a kid Bill knows. Lieutenant Tom Wilson, 22 years old, from Pennsylvania, wants to be a commercial pilot after the war. Talks about it all the time. Bill could help, could dive in, could end both Me-262s before they knew he was there. The YP-80 is that much better. But his orders say reconnaissance only. He watches Tom Wilson die, watches the Me-262 get behind Tom, watches the cannon fire, watches Tom's Mustang come apart. Bill keys his radio. Recon 2 continuing mission. His voice is steady because he's been flying combat for 2 years and you don't let emotion into your voice on the radio. But inside, something is breaking. He flies home, lands, files his report, goes to the latrine and throws up. That night, the squadron gets the news. Germany is retreating on all fronts. The war might be over in weeks, maybe days. Bill Leverett is sitting in the ready room looking at the YP-80 through the window. This beautiful, fast, deadly machine. The weapon that could have saved Tom Wilson. He thinks about Kelly Johnson, about 143 days of no sleep and cold coffee and drawing by hand. About 23 men in a circus tent who built tomorrow. He thinks about General Arnold, about careful decisions and engine reliability and not wanting to risk American lives on unproven technology. He thinks about Tom Wilson, who died in a P-51 while Bill Salm sat in a P-80 and followed orders. May 8th, 1945. Germany surrenders. The war in Europe is over. Bill Leverett has flown exactly 4 reconnaissance missions in the YP-80, gathered intelligence, followed orders, never fired a shot. The ground crew runs up when he lands cheering. War's over. Time to go home. Bill climbs out of the cockpit, doesn't say anything, just walks away, because all he can think about is Tom Wilson and the 14 months between when the P-80 was ready and when the war ended. 14 months, more than enough time. But time that politics and caution stole away. While Kelly Johnson is building the future in California across the Atlantic Ocean, a 62-year-old man named Jeffrey de Havilland is dealing with his own frustration. Jeffrey is British, born 1882, started building aircraft in 1908 before most people believed powered flight was possible. Founded his own company in 1920, designed the Mosquito, the wooden wonder that's been terrorizing Germany since 1942. In September 1943, just 3 months after Kelly Johnson started the P-80 project, de Havilland's team flies the first Vampire prototype. It's elegant, twin-boom design, clean, efficient, practical. Everything a British aircraft should be. It works beautifully. The Royal Air Force says, "No thank you. We have the Meteor. That's enough jet fighter for now." Jeffrey de Havilland is 62 years old. He's been designing aircraft for 35 years. He's forgotten more about aerodynamics than most engineers will ever learn. And the RAF is telling him they don't need his jet fighter. Not yet. Maybe later. He wants to scream. Instead, he writes letters. Polite letters. Professional letters. Letters explaining that the Vampire is ready now, that pilots could be training now, that squadrons could be operational now while the war is still being fought. The letters go unanswered. August 1945. The war is over. Japan has surrendered. Jeffrey de Havilland, now 63, sits down and writes one more letter. This one to Winston Churchill. The letter is discovered in Churchill's papers in 1989. Here's what Jeffrey wrote, Prime Minister. The Vampire first flew in September 1943. It has been ready for squadron service since January 1944. That is 20 months of war where British pilots died in Hurricanes and Spitfires while a superior fighter sat in our hangars because the Air Ministry deemed it not yet necessary. I am 63 years old. I have designed aircraft for 35 years. And I have learned this in war: good enough on time beats perfect and too late every single time. We built the future. They chose to wait for it. And men died because of that choice. Wrong. Churchill probably never read the letter. Probably never knew Jeffrey de Havilland was angry. Probably didn't care. But the Vampire gets the last word. June 1946, 1 year too late for the war. The Vampire enters RAF service. And for the next 21 years, it becomes the Royal Air Force's standard jet trainer. From 1946 to 1967, 3,268 Vampires are built. They train an entire generation of British pilots. The men who fly in Korea, Malaya, Suez, the Cold War. Every British jet pilot who keeps the West free during those dangerous years learns in a Vampire, including a young man named Prince Philip who trains on Vampires in 1953. The Vampire never fought in World War II, but it trained the pilots who won the peace. Is that enough? Does that redeem 20 months of delay? Jeffrey de Havilland dies in 1965 at age 83. At his funeral, RAF pilots fly Vampires in missing man formation. And somewhere maybe Jeffrey is satisfied. Maybe building the future is enough, even if you don't get to see it used the way you intended. Or maybe he's still angry, still thinking about those 20 months, still thinking about the pilots who died in Spitfires while Vampires sat in hangars waiting for permission to be brilliant. We'll never know. In part 2, we'll meet the pilots who tried to cheat the calendar with mixed power fighters, piston engines and jet engines in the same airframe. The Navy's desperate gamble to put jets on carrier decks before jets were ready for carrier decks. We'll meet Commander John Frost, who landed the first mixed power fighter on a carrier and watched the second one go off the deck into the Pacific. And we'll meet the men who built the biggest, most powerful piston fighter ever designed, just in time for nobody to need it. If you're still watching, if this story means something to you, leave a comment. Tell us about your service, about your father, about the machines you remember from when America built things that made the world take notice. Because this isn't just history, this is your history. The history of being ready, being brilliant, being too late, and sometimes being just in time for the war that came after. The Pacific Ocean doesn't care about your brilliant ideas. It's indifferent to innovation. Cold, vast, unforgiving. And in 1945, it's where the United States Navy is learning a hard truth. Putting a jet engine on an aircraft carrier is like trying to land a rocket on a postage stamp while the postage stamp is moving and also on fire. The problem is simple. The solution is not. Jet engines gulp fuel. Carrier decks are short. If your engine quits on approach, you're swimming. And the Pacific in 1945 is full of things that want to kill you. Japanese submarines. Sharks. The cold itself, which will take you in 20 minutes if the sharks don't get you first. So the Navy does what the Navy always does when facing an impossible problem. They find the smartest people they can, lock them in a room, and don't let them out until they solve it. March 1945. Naval Air Station, Patuxent River, Maryland. There's a fighter in the hangar that looks like someone couldn't decide what they were building. The Ryan FR-1 Fireball. It has a propeller. It also has a jet engine. Both. At the same time, the idea is clever, almost elegant in its paranoia. Use the piston engine for takeoff, landing, and patrol. Reliable? Proven. The same radial engine that's been keeping Navy pilots alive since 1942. But when you need speed, when a Japanese Zero is on your 6 or a kamikaze is diving at your ship, you light the jet. Instant speed, instant power, instant advantage. On paper, it's brilliant. In reality, it's two different airplanes trying to occupy the same space, and they hate each other. Commander John Frost is 36 years old. He's standing in the hangar looking at the FR-1 and thinking about his father. John's from Kansas, small town called Salina. His father raised wheat and cattle and had a philosophy about machinery. Keep it simple. The more moving parts something has, the more ways it can kill you. John joined the Navy in 1931. Annapolis graduate, flew SBD, Dauntless dive bombers at Midway, survived that hell, got promoted. Now he's a test pilot, which means the Navy hands him things that might work and asks him to find out. The FR-1 has two engines, two fuel systems, two sets of controls, two completely different ways of thinking about flight. John circles it twice, studies it. Finally asks the Ryan engineer standing next to him, which engine do I trust when I'm landing on a carrier at night with a 30-knot crosswind? The engineer, young kid fresh out of college, says both. John looks at him, doesn't blink. That's not an answer, son. But John's also Navy. And in the Navy, when they tell you to test something, you test it, even if it scares you, especially if it scares you, because that's how you find out what works and what kills people. November 1st, 1945, USS Wake Island, off San Diego. The war in the Pacific is over. Japan surrendered in August, but the Navy is still testing, still learning, still preparing for whatever war comes next. John Frost is strapped into the FR-1. The carrier deck is pitching. 3-foot swells. Not bad, but not calm either. He can smell the ocean, salt and diesel fuel, and that particular metallic scent of carrier deck operations. Men running, chains rattling. The organized chaos of making something impossible look routine. He runs through his checklist, piston engine first, the right R1820 radial, reliable as sunrise. It catches on the third try, settles into that familiar radial rumble. Like a tractor, like every reliable engine John's trusted with his life for the past 14 years. Then the jet. General Electric WWII-16. He hits the ignition. The jet spools up. It sounds wrong, not like the piston engine, higher pitched, angrier, like a vacuum cleaner that's upset about something. Both engines running, John can smell jet fuel and aviation gas at the same time. Two different fuels, two different chemical signatures. His airplane smells confused. The catapult officer gives him the signal. John salutes, advances both throttles. The FR-1 leaps off the deck. The piston engine pulls him forward. The jet pushes him. It feels like being grabbed by two different people running in the same direction but at different speeds. He climbs to 800 feet, circles the carrier. The FR-1 handles well. Responsive. The piston engine hums. The jet screams. Together they're fast, faster than any carrier fighter John's flown. He sets up for landing. This is the moment when complexity either proves itself or reveals why simplicity matters. At 500 feet, he's on the glide slope. Landing signal officer has the paddles, giving him corrections. Little left, little right. You're good. You're on speed. At 200 feet, John can see the deck clearly, can see the arresting wires, can see the men watching. Every carrier landing is a controlled crash. You're dropping a several thousand-pound machine onto a moving platform at 120 knots and hoping the hook catches a wire that's only a few inches thick. At 50 feet, John cuts throttle on both engines. The piston winds down smooth. The jet spools down. He's dropping. The deck is coming up. He feels the wheels hit, feels the tail hook grab the wire. The FR-1 stops hard. John's body slams forward against the harness. His teeth click together, but he's stopped. He's aboard. First carrier landing of a mixed power fighter in history. For about 3 seconds, John Frost feels like the smartest pilot in the world. Then his radio crackles. Flight deck, we have a problem. Number 2 is coming in hot. John looks up. Lieutenant Robert Henderson is on approach. Flying FR-1 number 2, same procedure, same aircraft, same everything. Henderson touches down, clean landing, hook catches wire number 3. Perfect. But the jet engine doesn't shut down. John can hear it from his cockpit. The General Electric WWII-16 is still running, still producing thrust. 80% power, maybe more. Henderson is trying to taxi, but the jet is pushing him forward. The piston engine is off. He can't kill the jet. The fuel valve is stuck. John watches Henderson fight it, watches him try to steer, try to brake. The FR-1 is being pushed forward by its own jet engine and Henderson can't stop it. The fighter rolls toward the edge of the deck. Men are running, trying to grab it, trying to chock the wheels, but it's too heavy and moving too fast. The FR-1 goes off the bow. Henderson goes with it. The destroyer USS Harlan is 200 yards off the port bow. They see it happen, see the FR-1 hit the water, see it start to sink immediately. Those things are heavy. Jet engine, piston engine, all that fuel. They sink like stones. But Henderson gets out, pops the canopy, kicks free. He's swimming. The destroyer picks him up 4 minutes later. He's fine. Cold, scared, but fine. The FR-1 is on the bottom of the Pacific. That night, John Frost sits in the wardroom with a cup of coffee that's gone cold. He's writing a report. 3 pages. Single-spaced. His handwriting is precise because John Frost is a precise man. The conclusion is simple. Mixed power fighters are too complex for carrier operations. In a night carrier landing, you need simplicity. One engine, one fuel system, one set of controls. Complexity kills sailors. He signs it, dates it, sends it up the chain of command. 6 months later, the FR-1 Fireball program ends. 66 aircraft built, 0 combat missions, 1 loss to a stuck fuel valve. But John Frost taught the Navy something important, something that will save thousands of lives in the wars to come. Simplicity is reliability. Reliability saves lives. Clever ideas that work in a hangar don't always work when you're landing on a carrier deck at night in a crosswind with a fuel gauge showing empty and a pilot who's been flying for 8 hours and is so tired he can barely see. Sometimes the best solution is the simple solution. The Navy learns. They'll build the F-9F Panther. Pure jet, 1 engine. Simple. It'll dominate Korea. But that lesson cost them an FR-1 and nearly cost them Robert Henderson. That's how progress works. Someone tries, someone fails, someone learns, and the next generation does it better. While the Navy is learning about complexity, the Army Air Forces is taking a different approach. Make the piston engine so powerful that jets don't matter. Enter the Goodyear F2G Super Corsair. The idea is simple and very American. Take something that already works and make it bigger. The F4U Corsair has been dominating the Pacific since 1943. It's fast, it's tough, it's reliable. Marine pilots love it. Navy pilots respect it. Japanese pilots fear it. Now imagine that Corsair. Same basic airframe, same inverted gull wing, same aggressive stance. But replace the 2,000 horsepower Pratt & Whitney R2800 with something completely insane, the Pratt & Whitney R4360 Wasp Major, 28 cylinders, 4,300 cubic inches, 3,000 horsepower. That's not an aircraft engine. That's a locomotive engine with wings attached. July 15, 1945. Goodyear Aircraft Facility, Akron, Ohio. Test pilot Bob Elder is 29 years old. He's from Akron. Grew up watching blimps being built. Joined the Army Air Forces in 1942. Flew P-47s in Europe. Got shot down once. Walked back to Allied lines. Decided test flying was safer than combat. He's about to discover he was wrong about that. The F2G is sitting on the runway. It's beautiful in a brutal way. Like a heavyweight boxer. All muscle, no elegance, just raw, intimidating power. Bob climbs in. The cockpit smells new. Paint, fresh upholstery, oil. The canopy closes and Bob is alone with 28 cylinders and 3,000 horses. He starts the R4360. The whole airplane shakes, not vibrates, shakes, like a wet dog. The engine is so big that Bob can't see straight ahead. He has to S-turn on the runway just to taxi, weaving left and right so he can see where he's going. He lines up, runs through his checklist. Everything looks good as it can look when you're about to test fly something that might decide to kill you. Full throttle for takeoff. The R4360 roars, not the smooth purr of a radial engine, a roar, like something angry waking up. The F2G accelerates so hard that Bob is pushed back in his seat. He's flown P-47s. Those things had power. This is different. This is violent. At 500 feet, Bob is doing 380 miles per hour in a climb. He looks at the airspeed indicator and laughs, actually laughs. Because it's insane, he's climbing like a rocket and accelerating like a dragster, and the airplane is shaking and roaring, and Bob Elder is having the time of his life. He levels off at 5,000 feet, tries some maneuvers. The F2G rolls like a fighter half its size, turns tight, responds instantly. It's not elegant, but it's effective, like a heavyweight boxer who's also a gymnast. Bob lands 45 minutes later, taxis to the hangar, shuts down. The sudden silence is almost painful after 45 minutes of that roaring monster. The Goodyear engineers run up. How was it? Bob climbs out. His ears are ringing. His hands are shaking from the vibration. He's grinning like an idiot. Gentlemen, he says, that is the finest piston fighter ever built. Fast as hell, tough as nails, turns on a dime. If this thing had gotten to the Pacific 6 months ago, the Japanese would have quit sooner. The engineers are thrilled. The F2G works. The Navy has ordered 418 of them. Production is ramping up. They'll be deployed to Okinawa. They'll defend the fleet from kamikazes. They'll dominate the Pacific skies. August 6, 1945. Hiroshima. The atomic bomb erases a city. The F2G Super Corsair is in final acceptance trials. Almost ready. Just a few more tests. August 9, 1945. Nagasaki, the second atomic bomb. August 15, 1945. Japan surrenders. Bob Elder lands the F2G that afternoon. The ground crew is cheering. War's over. Time to go home. No more dying, no more killing. The world can start healing. Bob shuts down the R-4360, climbs out. Someone asks him how it feels. He looks at the F2G, this magnificent, brutal, perfect machine. The best piston fighter ever built. 3,000 horsepower of American engineering. Ready to dominate, ready to fight. Too late. Like showing up to a gunfight with the biggest gun ever made, Bob says, and finding out the fight ended 5 minutes ago. The Navy cancels the order. Only 10 F2Gs are completed. They're sold as surplus after the war. But the story doesn't end there, because Americans don't waste good ideas. We just find new uses for them. 5 F2Gs are bought by civilian air racers. They modify them, strip out the military equipment, add a few tweaks, and from 1947 to 1949, F2G Super Corsairs dominate the Thompson Trophy race in Cleveland. A pilot named Cook Cleland, who actually helped design the F2G, wins the 1947 race at 396 miles per hour. In 1949, he pushes it to 397. For 3 years, the fastest aircraft in American skies isn't military. It's a surplus warbird that never fought in the war, racing around pylons in Cleveland, proving that American engineering finds a purpose even if it's not the original purpose. That's America. We build something for one reason. It doesn't work out. So we find another use. We adapt. We overcome. We don't waste brilliance. If you ever saw those Thompson Trophy races, if you remember the sound of that R4360 screaming past the grandstand at 400 miles per hour, 50 feet off the ground, drop a comment, tell us about it. Those were the days when war machines became peacetime legends. While America is building machines that arrive too late, Germany is doing something different. Not cautious, not careful, desperate. By 1944, Germany is losing. Everyone knows it. The Eastern Front is collapsing. The Western Allies are pushing through France. The bombing campaign is destroying German industry. But Germany still has scientists, still has engineers, and they're making one last desperate push to find a weapon that might change the mathematics of defeat. Richard Vogt is 52 years old. He's a complicated man with a complicated history. Born in Germany, emigrated to America in 1914, worked for Chance Vaught, brilliant designer. Then in 1933, he went back to Germany. Why, nobody knows for sure. Maybe he missed home. Maybe he believed in the new regime. Maybe he was just offered a better job. History doesn't judge motives kindly. By 1944, Vogt is working for Blohm and Voss in Hamburg. His mission design, a fighter that can reach 45,000 feet and shoot down bomb 29 super fortresses. Because Germany knows. The B-29 is coming to Europe. The plane that's destroying Japan will turn its attention to Germany, and normal fighters can't touch it up there in the thin air where the B-29 lives. Vogt designs the BV-155. It's brilliant on paper. Long wings, pressurized cockpit, turbocharged engine, everything you need to fight at altitude. September 1st, 1944. First flight, it works. But by September 1944, Germany doesn't have time, doesn't have resources, doesn't have the industrial capacity to turn a prototype into a weapon. Test pilot Paul Monge is 34 years old, Luftwaffe veteran, survived 47 combat missions on the Eastern Front, seen hell, lived through it. April 1945. Paul flies the BV-155, unarmed prototype, test flight only. He reaches 34,000 feet. The aircraft handles beautifully, stable, responsive. At altitude where the air is thin and most fighters gasp for oxygen, the BV-155 is comfortable. Paul lands, writes his report. One sentence stands out: with 6 more months of development, this aircraft could have changed the air war. 6 days later, British tanks are 10 miles from the airfield. April 15th, 1945. Richard Vogt receives orders. Destroy everything. The British are coming. Don't let them capture German technology. Vogt personally oversees the demolition, watches his life's work, his brilliant design being prepared for destruction. But before he sets the charges, he does something. Takes the complete blueprints, every detail, every calculation, puts them in a waterproof case, buries them in a bunker 400 feet from the hangar. Then he blows up the BV-155. 3 weeks later, Germany surrenders. 1946. French intelligence is going through captured German facilities. They find Vogt's bunker, recover the blueprints. French engineers study them. The BV-155 design influences their own high-altitude fighter projects. The ideas don't die, they just change nationality. That's how technology works in war. One country's desperation becomes another country's foundation. The Messerschmitt Me-263 is Germany's last attempt to fix the Me-163 Comet. The Comet was insane. Rocket-powered interceptor, climbed like a missile, got 7 minutes of fuel, then glided home. Killed almost as many German pilots as Allied bombers. The Me-263 was supposed to be safer. Better fuel system, longer endurance, less likely to dissolve its pilot in toxic propellants. February 1945. First glide tests. No rocket, just aerodynamics. Success. March 1945. Preparing for powered flight. April 1945. Allied bombing destroys the facilities. Program ends. American intelligence captures one Me-263 prototype, takes it back to the United States, studies it. The evaluation report, declassified in 1975, is brutally honest. Rocket interception concept is tactically sound but operationally insane. Propellant so toxic that ground crew must wear full protective gear. One fuel leak can kill everyone in a hangar. Technology is 20 years ahead of safety protocols. But the Americans take the idea, learn from it, make it safer, and 15 years later, they build the X-15, the fastest manned aircraft ever flown. Rocket-powered, based partly on lessons learned from the Me-263. Germany's desperation becomes America's achievement. That's the cruel irony of being too late. Your brilliant ideas don't die. They just help someone else win the next war. In Part 3, we'll cross the Pacific. We'll meet the Japanese pilots who tried to copy German technology from incomplete blueprints. We'll meet Lieutenant Toyohiko Inuzuka, who died testing a rocket fighter built from guesswork. And we'll come back to Bill Leverett, 5 years after Italy, in Korea, finally flying the P-80 in combat, and discovering that being too late in one war just means you're ready for the next one. If this story is reaching you, if you understand what it means to be ready and never called, leave a comment. Your service mattered. Your readiness mattered, even if you never fired a shot. Because being ready is what prevents wars, and preventing wars saves more lives than winning them. April 1944. German submarine pens keel. The concrete walls are 30 feet thick, built to withstand direct hits from Allied bombs. Inside, a Japanese submarine sits in the water. I-29, long range, designed to travel 12,000 miles underwater. The cargo being loaded is not weapons, not ammunition, not food. Blueprints, complete technical drawings of the Messerschmitt Me-163 Comet rocket fighter, Germany's gift to its Pacific ally. The technology that might stop B-29 super fortresses from burning Japanese cities. The submarine captain is Commander Takakazu Kanashi, 41 years old, veteran of Pearl Harbor. He's made this journey before, Germany to Japan, underwater the entire way, through the Atlantic, around the Cape of Good Hope, across the Indian Ocean, into the Pacific, 12,000 miles, 50 days if nothing goes wrong, 100 days if everything does. The cargo is loaded in waterproof cases, the hatches are sealed. I-29 slips out of Kiel on April 16, 1944, submerged, silent, carrying the future, July 26, 1944, 3 months later. The Philippine Sea, USS Sawfish is on patrol, diesel-electric submarine, Gato class. She picks up a contact on sonar. Large, moving slow, deep. Commander Eugene Sands is in the con. He's 32 years old. From Texas. He's made 5 war patrols, sunk 3 Japanese merchantmen. He knows the sound of a Japanese submarine. Bearing, he asks, 350, sir, range 2,000 yards, depth 100 feet. Sands makes his decision. Battle stations, make ready tubes 1 and 2. I-29 never knows Sawfish is there, never hears the torpedoes in the water. The first torpedo hits amidships. The second hits aft. I-29 breaks in half, sinks in 4 minutes. All hands lost. Commander Kanashi, 83 crew, and half the Me-163 blueprints. But only half. The other half was offloaded in Singapore 2 weeks earlier. Insurance. The Japanese learned from the Germans never trust everything to one vessel. Those incomplete blueprints make it to Japan. August 1944. The Japanese Navy hands them to Mitsubishi. Engineer Mihiro Takahashi is 46 years old. He's been designing aircraft since 1923, 21 years. He's good at his job, methodical, careful, brilliant when he needs to be. The Navy gives him the Me-163 plans and says, build this. We need it in 6 months. Takahashi spreads the blueprints on his table, studies them, and realizes immediately that critical sections are missing. Fuel mixture ratios, structural load calculations, safety protocols for handling the propellants. The Germans use T-Stoff and C-Stoff, hydrogen peroxide and hydrazine. Incredibly powerful, incredibly dangerous. Mixed wrong, they explode. Leaked, they dissolve human flesh like acid. Half the safety data went down with I-29. Takahashi and his team spend 10 months reverse engineering, guessing, calculating, testing, hoping. They call it the J-8M Shusui, sword stroke, poetic name for a weapon built from incomplete instructions and desperation. June 1945. The Shusui is ready for testing. On paper, it's beautiful. In reality, it's a death trap built from guesswork. But nobody knows that yet. Lieutenant Toyohiko Inuzuka is 28 years old. Fighter pilot, 7 confirmed victories. He's from Osaka, 3rd largest city in Japan. Before the war, his father owned a textile shop. Small, successful, respectable. Toyohiko joined the Navy in 1937. Trained as a pilot, flew Zeros in China, then the Pacific, survived Midway, survived the Philippine Sea, survived 3 years of combat that killed most of his friends. He's married to Kimiko. They have a daughter, Yuki, 3 years old. She has her mother's eyes and her father's smile. June 1945, the Navy asked for volunteers to test the Shusui, rocket-powered interceptor, experimental, dangerous. The survival rate for rocket test pilots in Germany was about 60%. 40% died in crashes or fuel explosions. Toyohiko volunteers. Kimiko asks him why. They're in their small house in Yokosuka. Yuki is asleep in the next room. Outside, they can hear B-29s flying over, high, untouchable, burning Japan one city at a time. Why, Kimiko asks. Why volunteer for something so dangerous? Toyohiko looks at his daughter's room. Because if I don't, someone else will. And maybe that someone has more children than we do. That's the last real conversation they have. July 7th, 1945. Saturday. Clear sky. Yokosuka Naval Air Base. Toyohiko wakes at 5 in the morning. Eats breakfast with Kimiko. Rice, pickled vegetables, miso soup. They don't talk much. What is there to say? He kisses Yuki goodbye. She's still half asleep. Won't remember this later. He kisses Kimiko, holds her for a moment. I'll be back for dinner, he says. At the airfield, the Shusui is being fueled. The ground crew is wearing protective gear. Rubber suits, breathing masks. The propellants are that dangerous. Toyohiko suits up. Flight suit, parachute, leather helmet, goggles. He climbs into the cockpit. The Shusui is small, cramped. The rocket engine takes up most of the fuselage. Not much room for the pilot. The canopy closes. Toyohiko is alone with 2,800 pounds of thrust and propellants that want to explode. 9:45 in the morning. The ground crew clears. Toyohiko signals ready. 9:47. Ignition. The rocket roars, not like a piston engine, not like a jet, like controlled fury. The Shusui leaps forward, accelerates. At 200 knots, Toyohiko pulls back and the fighter launches into the sky. Climb rate is insane. 10,000 feet per minute, straight up, like a missile. Toyohiko's vision grays from the G-forces. He's been flying for 8 years. Never felt anything like this. 950, altitude 16,000 feet. Toyohiko keys his radio. Aircraft handling normally. His voice is calm, professional. The voice of a man doing his job. 951. The fuel system fails. The mixture is wrong. 10% too much sea stuff. Takahashi's team guessed wrong. The excess hydrazine is eating through the fuel lines. Corrosive. Unstoppable. Toyohiko doesn't know this. All he knows is the engine flames out. Suddenly, no warning. 1 second roaring thrust. Next second silence. The Shusui enters a spin. Toyohiko tries to recover. Stick forward. Rudder. All the training, all the experience. But the aircraft is too unstable without power. 952. Toyohiko reaches for the canopy release. Tries to eject. But ejection seats in 1945 are experimental. The mechanism jams. The canopy won't open. 953. Impact. Toyohiko Inuzuka dies instantly. The Shusui disintegrates, scatters across a rice field 5 miles from the base. Kimiko is at home when the Navy officer arrives. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She knows before he speaks. Knows from his face, from the way he removes his cap, from the formality in his posture. Mrs. Inuzuka, I regret to inform you. She doesn't hear the rest, doesn't need to. Toyohiko promised he'd be back for dinner. He's not coming back. Yuki asks where Papa is. Kimiko doesn't know how to answer. The J-8M Shusui program ends, 40 days before Japan surrenders. No time to fix the fuel system. No time to test again. No time for anything. Toyohiko Inuzuka is the first and last Japanese pilot to fly a rocket fighter. 50 years later, 1995. Kimiko Inuzuka is 75 years old. White hair, gentle face. She lives in the same house in Yokosuka, raised Yuki alone, watched her daughter grow up, get married, have children, grandchildren who never met their grandfather. A researcher interviews her for a documentary, asks about Toyohiko, about the Shusui, about that July morning in 1945. Do you blame the engineers, the researcher asks? Do you blame the military for sending your husband in an unsafe aircraft? Kimiko is quiet for a long moment. Then she says, no, I blame the war. My husband died testing a weapon that never fought, but he didn't die for nothing. He died testing the limits. That's how progress happens. Someone has to be first. Someone has to try. I wish it hadn't been him, but I'm proud it was. Her eyes are wet, but her voice is steady. He was a good man, a good father, a good pilot, and he did his duty. That's all any of us can do. The researcher asks if she kept anything from that time, any mementos. Kimiko shows him a photograph. Toyohiko in his flight suit, smiling, young, alive. I kept this, she says, so Yuki would remember her father's face. So my grandchildren would know that brave men died trying to protect their families. Even when the weapons weren't ready, even when the cause was lost, they still tried. She touches the photograph, gently. That matters. That will always matter. March 1950, 5 years after the war ends, Bill Leverett is back in Alabama, working as a flight instructor, teaching kids how to fly Piper Cubs. It's honest work, peaceful, boring. He's 31 years old. The war feels like another lifetime. He tries not to think about Italy, about Tom Wilson, about the P-80 that could have saved him. Then North Korea invades South Korea. The phone rings. The Air Force wants him back. June 1950. Bill reports to the 8th Fighter Bomber Wing. They hand him his assignment, F-80 Shooting Star. 5 years too late, Bill Leverett finally gets to fly the jet fighter in combat. June 27th, 1950. Bill's first mission, ground attack near Seoul, North Korean armor. Tanks, trucks, artillery. The F-80 performs beautifully. Fast, responsive. The jet engine that was experimental in 1945 is proven in 1950. Bill makes 3 passes, destroys 2 tanks, damages several trucks. When he lands, he feels something he hasn't felt in 5 years. Vindication. The P-80 works. Kelly Johnson was right. If only they'd deployed it sooner, November 1950. Everything changes. Chinese forces cross the Yalu River. With them come MiG-15 jet fighters, Soviet-built. Fast, maneuverable, better than the F-80 in almost every way. Bill encounters his first MiG on November 8th. He's flying escort. The MiG comes out of the sun. Bill sees it, turns to engage. The MiG is faster, climbs better, turns tighter. Everything the P-80 was supposed to be in 1945, the MiG-15 is in 1950, one generation ahead. Bill survives the encounter. Barely. The MiG pilot makes a mistake. Overshoots. Bill escapes. But he knows. The F-80 is obsolete. Already. 5 years after it was too late for World War II, it's too late for Korea. And here's the painful irony. The MiG-15's design was influenced by captured German research. The same research that spawned the Me-262. The plane the P-80 was built to counter. Germany lost the war, but their technology won the peace. 2002, Bill Leverett is 83 years old. The Smithsonian is interviewing him for their oral history project. They ask about the P-80, about World War II, about Korea. Do you regret not flying the P-80 in combat during World War II? The interviewer asks. Bill is quiet. His hands are spotted with age. Liver spots, arthritis. The hands that flew P-38s and P-51s and P-80s are very old now. Yes, he says, every day, but not for the reason you think. I don't regret missing glory. I regret that my buddies died when I was sitting in a plane that could have saved them. That's what too late means. It's not about the machine. It's about the men who didn't come home because we were 6 months too cautious. He pauses, looks at something the interviewer can't see. Maybe Tom Wilson. Maybe Crawford. Maybe all the ghosts. But here's what I learned in Korea. The P-80 wasn't built for World War II. It was built for the next war. The jet age. The Cold War. We didn't lose World War II by being cautious with the P-80. We won the Cold War by learning how to build jets right. So was it worth it? I don't know. But I sleep a little better thinking maybe it was. The interviewer asks one more question. If you could go back, knowing what you know now, would you change anything? Bill thinks about it, really thinks. I'd want those 6 months back, he says. 6 months earlier deployment. That's all. Not for glory, for the guys who didn't come home. But you don't get time back. You just learn from it. And we learned. God help us, we learned. Let's do the mathematics. The cruel cold numbers of too late. P-80 Shooting Star, combat ready. March 1944, war ends August 1945. Gap 17 months. Estimated American lives that could have been saved 2 to 500. De Havilland Vampire, combat ready. January 1944. War ends August 1945. Gap 19 months. RAF pilots trained post-war over 15,000. F2G Super Corsair. Combat ready August 1945. War ends August 1945. Gap 0 months. Arrived exactly on time for nothing. Kamikaze shot down in World War II 0. Thompson Trophy races 1-3. J-8M Shusui. First powered flight July 7, 1945. Test pilot killed. War ends 39 days later. Combat mission 0. Legacy of a photograph of Toyohiko Inuzuka that his widow kept for 50 years. The lesson? Being brilliant isn't enough. Timing is everything. But here's the thing about these aircraft. They didn't disappear, didn't fade away. Their legacy lived on in ways their designers never imagined. The P-80 Shooting Star became the T-33 trainer. 6,557 built. Trained more American pilots than any other jet. Over 50,000. The last T-33 retired from active service in 2017, 72 years after first flight. The de Havilland Vampire. 3,268 aircraft. Exported to 31 countries. RAF's primary jet trainer from 1946 to 1967. Some still flying in air shows today. The FR-1 Fireball. One preserved at the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola. Its lesson's simplicity saves lives informed every carrier jet that followed. The F2G Super Corsair. 5 racing variants still flying, holder of unlimited class speed records for 70 years. Proof that American engineering finds a purpose for everything. If you get the chance, go see these birds. The P-80 at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in Washington. The Vampire at RAF Museum, Cosford in England. The FR-1 in Pensacola. The F-2G at the National Air and Space Museum in Dulles. Stand in front of them, touch the aluminum if they let you. Look at the cockpits. And remember, these were built by men your age. Your fathers, your uncles, the greatest generation. They were too late for the war they were built for. But they won the peace that followed. This story is for every veteran watching. You know what it's like to train for something that never comes. To prepare for a fight that's over before you arrive. To have the tools and the will but not the moment. That doesn't diminish your service. Doesn't make your sacrifice less. Because the weapons we build, the skills we learn, the readiness we maintain, that's what prevents the next war. The P-80 was too late for World War II, but it was right on time for the Cold War. Your service, whenever it was built, the foundation for the peace we have today. You were ready. That's what mattered. Not whether you fought, whether you were ready to fight, and being ready prevented more wars than we'll ever know. I want to hear from you. Did you serve what branch? What years? Did your father or grandfather work in aviation during or after World War II? Have you seen any of these aircraft in person? What stories do you have about American ingenuity and determination? Drop them in the comments. Let's honor the greatest generation and the machines they built. Too brilliant to fail, too late to fight, but right on time for everything that came after. There's a photograph I want to tell you about. It's not famous, you won't find it in history books. It was taken in 2003 at the Smithsonian. A man is standing in front of a P-80 Shooting Star. He's 84 years old, white hair, bent with age, but his eyes are clear. His grandson is with him, 12 years old. The boy is looking at the airplane with wonder, this sleek silver machine from another era. The boy asks, "Grandpa, did you ever fly one of these in the war?" The old man is quiet for a moment. Then he says, "No, son. The war ended before I got the chance." "Are you sad about that?" Another pause, longer this time. "Yes and no. Sad because I couldn't help my friends when they needed it, but grateful too, because if I didn't need to fight it meant peace was coming, and peace is always worth more than glory." The boy thinks about this, then asks, "Was it a good airplane?" The old man smiles, touches the aluminum skin, gentle, like greeting an old friend. "The best," he says. "It was the future, just arrived a little early for its own good." They stand there together, grandfather and grandson, past and future, connected by a machine that was too late for one war and too early for another. That's the legacy of these aircraft. Not what they did, but what they taught us. That timing matters. That readiness matters. That American ingenuity finds a way even when the original plan fails. That good ideas never die, they just wait for the right moment. And that the men who built these machines, who flew them, who believed in them, were doing something more important than winning a single war. They were building the future. Sometimes the future arrives late, sometimes it arrives early, but it always arrives. And when it does, you want to be ready. These 10 aircraft were ready, just not quite on time. But their pilots, their engineers, their legacy, that was right on time for everything that followed. God bless the greatest generation. God bless American ingenuity. God bless every man and woman who served, whether they fired a shot or simply stood ready. Your service mattered. Your readiness mattered. You built the world we live in today. Thank you for watching. Drop your stories in the comments. Let's remember together. Because these machines were too late to win the war, but they were perfectly timed to win our respect, our admiration, and our eternal gratitude.